Hi, it's Joe from PrepAgent. Today we're going to be going over contracts. I enjoy going over contracts a little bit more because the explanations are a little more fun, easier to understand, and you can use examples. And always remember, if you have questions about certain concepts or questions that things come up as you study for the real estate exam, use our Facebook group. Just look up PrepAgent Study Group, and there's a lot of people just like you studying for the real estate exam. So, without any further ado, drum roll please, let's go to contracts. Let's see who's excited here. Okay, ready to go. First question of the day. In a listing, which clause will allow a broker to collect a commission for a specified period of time after the term of the listing has expired? Release clause, acceleration clause, delay pay clause, or protection period clause? Let's see what you guys think here. I see some of the chats, some great name, Beauty School Dropout. I love that name. Love that movie too, Grease. Okay, and the answer here is protection period clause. So protection period clause, what's that? It's also known as a safety clause, okay? So a protection period clause is a time after the listing expires to close deals with buyers you were working with during the term of the listing. It is not a time to find a new buyer. So for example, if I sign a listing for 6 months and I find Bill in the 5th month, but then Bill goes away on vacation for a month and a half, I could still close that deal with Bill when he comes back from his vacation, as long as I have written a protection period clause sufficient amount of time to close that deal. It's not a time to find a new buyer. Now, of course, when the listing expires, I got to write down on a piece of paper all the people I've been working with. I write down Bill. Then when he gets back from vacation, I could close the deal. And that's all written in the protection period clause, also known as the safety clause. All right, let's go on to the next one. The duration of a listing agreement is 3 months, whatever is negotiated between the agent and the seller, what is negotiated between the broker and the seller, or 90 days. What do you guys think? And their answer is whatever is negotiated between the broker and the seller. Now, don't confuse industry practice with things that are legal and law. Industry practice, normally people say 90 days, 3 months, things of that nature. But the reality is you could have it for 18 days, 3 hours, and 32 seconds if you want. It's whatever's agreed upon between the broker and the seller. Remember, listings, when the day is done, belong to the broker, not the agent. Okay. Which of the following is an acceptable termination date for an enforceable exclusive listing of residential real property? 90 days from the completion of construction, 3 days after notice of rescission of the seller, whenever the loan is funded, 90 days after the listing agreement is signed. So which one of these are acceptable? Congratulations, Tanya, for passing your exam. I see that in the chat window. Good job. All right, let's see what the answer is here. "90 days after the listing agreement is signed." The reason is because you need a definite termination date. 90 days from the completion of construction, you don't know when construction is going to be complete. 3 days after notice of rescission of the seller, we don't know when that's going to happen. And we certainly don't know when the loan is getting funded. So the only definite thing here is when the agreement is signed. So that it constitutes a definite termination date, which is what you need for it to be acceptable. Which of the following statements about options is false? The optionee does not have any rights in the land. Consideration must be given by the optionee to the optionor. A lease option is a unilateral contract. The option binds the optionee to the performance. See what you guys think here. Okay, the answer is the option binds the optionee to performance. So before we move on, do we all understand the OREE rule? Who here knows the OREE rules? If you know it, then write it in the chat. So what's the difference between OR and EE? Okay, so what I want you guys to write in the chat is OR is the give or, EE receives. So remember my little song, lessor, vendor, trustor, optionor is the give or the proprietor. Lessee, vendee, grantee, give me property, makes me happy. I know it sounds stupid. You sound like a 5-year-old when you do it, but when you pass the exam, you'll be super psyched about it. So don't worry about sounding a little silly. Okay, so as we have here, the optionee is the one who receives an option. The moment you see the word bind, you know it's false. Because if you know the definition of an option, right, it means you don't have to do something. That's what, by definition, an option is. So the optionee binds the optionee to performance is false because it contradicts the very definition of the word option. Okay. All the following are essentials of each and every contract except proper writing, capable parties, mutual consent, and lawful object. What do you guys think? So before I give the answer, I'd like you guys to do something in the chat. I see a lot of you guys answering the question here, but I'd like to see who could write for me the 4 essentials of a valid contract. What are the 4 essentials of a valid contract? And I'll give you a hint. 3 out of the 4 are here. There's 1 missing. Okay, so you got mutual consent, offer and acceptance. Offer and acceptance and mutual consent are pretty much the same thing. Lawful object, consideration, and capable parties. Okay, so if you don't know this, I want you guys to write this down. Capable parties, mutual consent, lawful object, and consideration. Offer and acceptance and mutual consent are the same thing. Writing is essential in many, many, many contracts, but not all of them. It's not one of the main essentials. In most contracts, it's essential. But for example, a lease under a year in most states does not have to be in writing for it to be enforceable. And also remember, you could have oral contracts. Okay, moving right along. And before I go on, I'll write this here. I wanted to mention to you guys that in the chat, my partner is answering a lot of questions, interacting with you guys. It's not necessarily me. As I'm reading these questions and talking through this, I'm looking at the chat, but it's hard for me to answer in real time. But my partner is there to talk you guys through things. You have questions there, he's there. But just so you know, that's not the same person answering the chat is not the same person reading these questions. Okay, here you go. Oh, and he gave a nice wave. If a person obtains a contract through duress, that contract is voidable, void, unenforceable, or valid. Voidable, void, unenforceable, or valid. See what you guys think here. Voidable. So whenever you're forced to do something, it becomes voidable. For example, if you wanted to buy a house, okay, and you were looking at houses, and I wanted you to buy another house, and I said, buy that house. You said, I'm not sure. And I held a gun to your head. I said, buy that house, buy that house. I'm threatening you. You're under duress. Does that make it voidable or void? So it's a super scary situation. You're being threatened to your life to sign the contract to buy the house. Does that make it voidable or void? What do you guys think? So that would make it voidable. And you may say, that's crazy. Why is it voidable when I have a gun to my head? That's insane. It should be void. Well, the reality is I may be crazy with a gun to your head, but you may say, you know what? Calm down, crazy person. I actually like this house. I was going to buy it anyway. So you can relax with the whole gun thing. And I'd say, okay, my bad. So that makes it voidable because you have the option to buy the house, even though I may be acting crazy. Okay, moving right along. To assign a contract for the sale of real estate means to transfers one's rights under the contract, allow the seller and the buyer to exchange positions, permit another broker to act as an agent for the principal, record the contract with the county recorder's office. What does that mean? Okay, transfers one's rights under the contract. You see this a lot when they talk about leases. They say, what's the difference between assigning and subletting your lease? Well, assigning, you're giving total responsibility. You're only giving possession. You're not transferring over the responsibility. So somebody could stay there, but you're still responsible. But with assigning, you're giving everything over. It's not my problem, not my place. It's a new person's responsibility as well. An option requires the optionee to complete the purchase, gives the buyer a lien on the property, results in a commission to the broker if the optionee does not exercise the option, keeps an offer open for a specified period of time. What do you guys think? So you know it can't be required because we went over that before. That goes against the definition of an option. Keeps an offer open for a specified period of time. So very often you guys will hear about a lease option. This is a great example to understand the concept of options. In that situation, what you'll see is somebody will rent a property with the option to purchase it at the termination of the lease. The way they do that is they may pay excessive amount of rent, they may make an early down payment, and if they buy the property, all that money goes towards the property. If they don't, which is their option, they don't have to, but then they'll lose the extra money they put forth towards the property over the course of that lease. So that's a good example of an option. That's a lease option, and it kept that offer open for that time of that lease, that option to purchase the property. A safety clause is found in a deposit receipt, listing agreement, loan broker statement, and leases. What do you guys think? I do hope you guys get this right because we went over this concept before. I'm hoping you guys wrote listing agreement, okay? And just to review what a safety clause is, it's a period of time after the listing terminates where you could close deals with buyers you were working with during the term of the listing. Ooh, a long one. Albert is a tenant and agrees to perform certain repairs for Bob, who is the owner. Despite repeated promises, Albert fails to perform the repairs. Bob then writes up a contract and compels Albert to sign it by threatening to evict him if he does not. Such a contract would be enforceable, void, illegal, or voidable. What do you guys think? The word that should have popped out to you is right here, threatening. And before, we went over that other example when I said, have your gun to your head, buy the house. Well, same deal here, except now we're talking about a lease. We're not talking about buying a property. Making the answer voidable. A contract in which all parties have fulfilled their promises is a expired contract, executory contract, completed contract, or executed contract. See what you guys think. And there's no fun stories here, except you just got to know when something is executed means it's completed. It's done. I guess that would make me the executioner, huh? Okay, here we go. The primary purpose of a listing agreement is to list all the improvements and amenities of the property, serve as a contract of employment between the owner and the broker, give the broker permission to sell all of his principal's properties, serve as a guide for a sales contact. Boom. Serve as a contract of employment between the owner and the broker. A listing agreement is an employment contract. That's what it is first and foremost. The other thing I want you guys to remember, a lot of people say a listing agreement is a contract to sell my house. You are not getting hired to sell a house. You're getting hired to find a buyer. The reason you can't sell the house is because it's not your house. It's your client's house. You are there to find a buyer, bring the buyer to that person, then they decide if they want to sell their house to that person. And that's very important for your exam that you know the difference. The other thing I want to ask you guys, and this is a trick question, So everybody ready for this one? Is a listing contract a bilateral or unilateral contract? It's a trick question here. Is it bilateral or unilateral? Right now, I am so proud of Amber Smith. Amber Smith got it. It can be either. This is why it's tricky. It depends. Nice job, Paul. It depends because an open listing is unilateral. Exclusive listings are bilateral. Okay, so you guys got to be careful on that one. Exclusive means there's only one party. Exclusive listings are bilateral. Okay, non-exclusives like open listings are unilateral. Okay, avoidable contract is one which is subject to disciplinary action, has no force or effect, is valid now but can be voided by interested party for due cause, is binding on neither party and not subject to ratification. What do you guys think? Good. It is valid now but can be voided by an interested party for any due cause. The listing agreement is essentially an employment contract, option to sell, a unilateral contract, or a purchase contract. Okay, I went down pretty quickly as we explained that before. First and foremost, it's an employment contract. Okay. Usually, be careful of words like these. Usually a broker has a right to commission only on the basis of negotiations which he completes during the term of the listing agreement, unless the completion was during the protection period clause, the listing agreement has a liquidated damages clause, the listing involves the exchange of properties, he brings a court suit against his principal. What do you guys think? The completion was during the protection period clause. After tonight's webinar, I really hope you guys don't get anything wrong regarding safety clause or protection period clause, as we've already seen 3 to 4 questions about that same concept today. Maybe we'll see more. Okay, Janice Riceland is shown a home by her agent, Richard. She makes an offer and gives Richard a check. At what point does her offer become an enforceable contract to buy? When Janice is notified the seller accepts the offer, as soon as Richard receives an offer and her check, as soon as the seller receives the offer and the check, when the deposit check clears. What do you guys think? When Janice is notified the seller accepts the offer. Okay, so we're going to review something real quick, and this is an important concept. First, before I review that, little question. What are the 4 essentials of a valid contract? I'd like everybody to try and write that as fast as you can. What are the 4 essentials of a valid contract? So please write the 4 essentials in the chat window. Offer and acceptance, good. Mutual consent, capable parties, and consideration. Offer and acceptance, mutual consent, consideration, capable parties. I'm going to follow that up with another question. When is mutual consent mutual consent? Or another way to say it, when is offer acceptance or meeting of the minds, it's another way to say that, offer and acceptance. So when does that happen? Do you have agreement when I make an offer? Do you have agreement when the seller accepts the offer? When does it happen? Okay, so a lot of people get this wrong. It's actually a 3-step process. I make an offer, you accept the offer, and the acceptance has to be communicated back to the buyer. That's a very tricky one people get wrong. They think, oh, obviously when the seller accepts the offer. Now I want you to think about this scenario. I make an offer to you. You think it's great. You accept the offer, but it stays on your kitchen table. I'm sitting at home waiting. I proceed to go look for other offers. I move on with my life. A week later, I go make another offer on another property. You're wondering what just happened. Well, what just happened is you never communicated back that acceptance, so I never knew it, so I moved on. So it's really only offer and acceptance when you have that 3-step process. Offer, acceptance, and communicate back that acceptance. Which of the following is not required for a contract to be legally binding? Capacity, writing, mutual consent, or lawful object? What do you guys think? Okay, we went over this before. We went over the 4 essentials. A lot of you wrote down. Writing's not one of the 4 essentials. People make that mistake a lot because almost all contracts need to be in writing. But almost all is not the same as required for everything. Okay? The duration of a listing agreement is whatever is negotiated between the agent and the seller, 90 days, whatever is negotiated between the broker and the seller, or 3 months. So we did this question before, so we're doing it again. So I hope everybody gets it right. What do you guys think? And it's C, whatever is negotiated between the broker and the seller. Which of the following would not make a contract voidable? Illegal purpose, duress, undue influence, or fraud? Which of the following would not make a contract voidable? Illegal purpose, duress, undue influence, or fraud? So the answer here is illegal purpose. Okay? Illegal purpose would not make it voidable. That would make it straight up void. Because remember, voidable contract, you have the option to go through with it. But if it's an illegal purpose, like in the show Breaking Bad, where he's selling that drug house, you can't go through with that contract. It's not voidable. You don't have the option to buy like a big, whatever he was making, crack house or whatever it was, because that's a highly illegal purpose. Okay? Remember the 4 essentials. If it violates one of those 4 essentials, okay, it is void, not voidable. The law that requires the real estate contracts to be in writing to be enforceable is the law of descent and distribution, statute of frauds, statute of limitations, parole evidence rule. See what you guys think here. And the answer is statute of frauds. Statute of frauds have to do with writing. Statute of limitations has to do with time. Undue influence or duress applied to one party to a contract makes the contract voidable, invalid, unenforceable, or void. What do you guys think? Voidable, invalid, unenforceable, or void? Voidable. Which of the following is an acceptable termination date for an enforceable exclusive listing of residential real property? 3 days after notice rescission of the seller, 90 days from completion of construction, 90 days after the listing agreement is signed, or whenever the loan is funded. So we went over this one before. This is another review. It is 90 days till the listing agreement is signed. Now I want to go into further detail about this. This is an exclusive listings. Those need a definite termination date, as per this question. An open listing does not. Why is that? Well, that's because an exclusive listing, you're exclusive with one person. And if they don't do a good job, you're kind of stuck. So there needs to be a definite termination date. So if they don't do what they said they're going to do, well, at least you could sleep at night knowing you're not with them forever. You can move on to somebody else when the listing is expired. With an open listing, it doesn't need a definite termination date. So if somebody's not doing a good job, you could go right to another person the next day. You don't have to wait for any timetable. So an open listing does not need a definite termination date, whereas an exclusive listing does. Important difference I want you guys to know. How am I doing? Doing all right? Okay. Next question. Option for a specified period of time, requires the optionee to complete the purchase, results in a commission to the broker if the optionee does not exercise the option, or gives the buyer a lien on the property. What do you guys think? Keeps an offer open for a specified period of time. Good. Now, one thing I want you guys to notice about our program as you guys use it, our programmer did a magnificent job in putting questions you want to review or questions you get wrong on the right-hand side. Other programs don't show you those till you finish everything. We made it so that while you're taking the exams, the practice exams, you could always put them to review on the right and go back to them at any point during your studies. So you don't have to finish a whole set of questions in order to get to the ones that you wanted to review or you got wrong. Okay, let's go to this last one. We did this one before, so hopefully you guys get it real quick. Janice Riceland showing a home by her agent, Richard. Janice Riceland is shown a home by her agent, Richard. She makes an offer and gives Richard a check. At what point does her offer become an enforceable contract to buy? As soon as the seller receives the offer and the check, when the deposit check clears, when Janice is notified the seller accepts the offer, as soon as Richard receives her offer and her check. What do you guys think? Good. That's all the questions I had laid out, but I have a few more questions for you guys. So here we go. Can you give me an example of a unilateral contract? Let's see if you guys can do that. Give me an example of a unilateral contract. Who could do that? An example of a unilateral contract. Open listing is a good one. Give me another one. Lost dog poster is a great one. Find Muffy. I'll give you $500, but you don't have to go look for Muffy. So we got an open listing, open. I'm looking for one here that we went over today. A lease option. Remember, we went over that. That lease option is a unilateral contract. When you see that option, you don't have to buy. Okay. So we went over a lot of good questions there. I got one more. Who here could tell me the difference between an exclusive right to sell listing and an exclusive agency listing? The difference between an exclusive right to sell listing and an exclusive agency listing. What do you guys think? Okay, I'm back, so you guys can see my face. So the exclusive agency listing, exclusive right to sell listing, the difference is when you have an exclusive agency listing, if the owner sells themselves, you get nothing. An exclusive right to sell listing, you get paid no matter what. So with that being said, this terminates tonight's webinar, and we'll be back with another one real soon. Please look for the calendar and you'll see when we have it. And it's been a pleasure. Remember, go to PrepAgent.com and check us on our Facebook, Instagram, and any other social media outlets we got. If you want to discuss these concepts with other people just like you, please be sure to join our group. Just look up PrepAgent Real Estate Study Group, Real Estate Exam Study Group, excuse me. Other than that, this is Joe from PrepAgent. See you guys later.